Thank you for joining the Guild Complex Presents Exhibit B, number 3. Those images were from visual artist and journalist Vashon Jordan Jr., who you'll be hearing from later in this program. I'm your host and co-curator, James Stewart III. But since we now know each other, you just go with the less formal Jim. Or given the time of the year, I'll briefly accept Jimmy Holiday or Jimmy Claus. Consider me your very own Black atheist Marxist elf, bringing you stylish turtlenecks. See this thing? Not bad. And also hoping to unionize Santa's sweatshops in the North Pole. If you've seen our other programs, you'll notice that I'm missing the Danny Kaye to my Bing Crosby, the Ivory to my Ebony, the Dumb to my Dumber, Ian Wojciechowicz. That's because we're taking extra safety precautions in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, which feels like it's never ending. However, he is on the chat right now, so feel free to say hey to him there. Now that we've met, I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful sponsors and partners in this show who we couldn't do it without, the Guild Literary Complex. Since 1989, the Guild Literary Complex has served the Chicago community through innovative programming that highlights the intersections of marginality, the power of community, and the impact of arts and activism. They build on Chicago's rich literary traditions through vibrant storytelling and radical inclusion, advancing access to and from the margins. The Guild Literary Complex supports and encourages the voices of all backgrounds and experiences to tell their truths, whether they're literary powerhouses or talented newcomers. They view literature as a vehicle of connectivity and aim to merge seemingly disparate groups across all of Chicago's 50 wards. If you're so inclined and have the means, the Guild Complex, like many other nonprofits this year, could use a little extra help. So in the chat, we will drop links if you're inclined and you have the means to do so to help them out, because they do a lot of great work around the city helping literary arts. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we are on stolen land, the result of acts of genocide perpetrated by white settlers in the United States of America against this land's indigenous inhabitants. I recognize the complexity of myself, a Black non-native person, in doing so, but I do it with an open heart and as an act of solidarity between this nation's most oppressed peoples. This land we refer to as Chicago is, was, and forever will be that of the Potawatomi, Kickapoo, Peoria, Sioux, and the Miami. I use past, present, and future tenses because Native people are still here, surviving and thriving. Indigenous people are leading voices in the struggle against white supremacy and police brutality, and they are also role models in fight for environmental justice. To find out more about the land you're on, we recommend you download the Native Lands app. We'll drop that link in the chat. And we've also attached a few other resources if you are interested in creating your own land acknowledgement statement. We have a full show this evening with performances from some really great artists and some even better friends: Rabha Ashry, Caroline Coolidge McCraw, Alex Wells Shapiro, and a conversation with Vashon Jordan Jr. and J. Howard Rozier. Kicking everything off, though, is Daniel Woody, coming to us live from Shanghai. He joins us this evening here, morning there, Thursday here, Friday there. And now that we've successfully located each other in space-time, we're really excited to have him. Daniel Woody is a creature of the city, born in Los Angeles, raised in Las Vegas, educated in Chicago, and now living in Shanghai, where he teaches in the writing program at the New York University Shanghai. His writing is published or forthcoming in Rhino, the Chicago Review, Boat, the Volta, and elsewhere. Without further ado, this is Daniel Woody.
Hey everyone, I'm so happy to be here this morning, as James said, for me. I especially am thankful that to be reading for the Guild Literary Complex. Their work with Gwendolyn Brooks and the Brooks Day events, things like that, were really useful to me in grad school, really helped me open up my practice. So what I'm gonna do today is I have 5 poems to share, and rather than looking at my fabulous face, I'm going to share my screen and show you this video just of some wildlife. And I invite you to look for happy coincidences or overlaps between the language and the animal behavior. This is unplanned, so there may be no exciting moments, or maybe there'll be funny moments and strange moments, but we'll see what happens. So give me a second to just share my screen here. Rage, 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 rage at, rage in, rage to, rage for, rage from, rage towards. And of course, there is rage against. I can think of examples: the machine, the dying of the light. Another preposition might be nice: through, as, through denial, as disease. In Latin, rage is spelled like rabies. Rage is illness, inhumanity, incoherence. To be in a rage is to be animal, wild-eyed, mouth foaming, fearless, suspicious, terminal. Lord. Is it a trumpet I? 12 again, still in my believing. J says from wickedness, wickedness meaning perhaps blackness phase. I wait to vanish like some Netflix character. J, you thief of night. Oh, I believe I'll go back home. I would know J by his trumpet's bleat. J in June, yes, jazz. I laugh, my education, a kind of rage, a kind of prayer, a kind of modus vivendi. I replace sleep's kindling and bid farewell to evening prayers, to anticipating midnight music. I, years later, yes, seized by Stockholm, hear a trumpet at night. I ready the body, exhale. I shiver or shudder. J, take me. I shriek, my eyes closed. I tremble, the rapture closer. Or was that the radio of a passing car, a neighbor's wind chimes? And I again remember, of course I remember again, what it means to be or to have been face kidnapped. Theory of forms. After the balloon explodes, a toddler, he refuses another with a hand, a signal of disgust predating language. He communicating more, perhaps incredulity, inductivity, incorporeality, perhaps shock at such existence. He places on the forehead a palm, a gesture he would remember again in 20 years, a gesture which condemns the world and its relentless traumas. He searches for someone to explain this feeling, someone to explain whether to laugh or to cry. Adults push another balloon towards him, another balloon, the last thing he wants, but starting to understand, he invites his left to join his right, on his forehead, affecting confusion like a pro, till he begins to connect the size and shape of his head to the size and shape of the balloon. He sees that death will come for him as it did the balloon. Death will come, he bursts, perceiving for the first time absolute terror. That Cummings poem begins with 4 words: Hope, faith, life, love. After all the bargaining and anger, denial and depression, he replaces acceptance with hope, faith, life, love. In other words, you can't love if you can't live. You can't live without faith. You can't have faith without hope. But hope seems impossible given our moment, given our president, given our penchant for mass murders. Hope, who but the utterly naive has any use for this word, yet some insist, some resist rational thought and leap. Yes, hope is a leap into the abyss. Knowing solutions can reject all gravity. Believing the imagination solves, empowers, systemizes a performance, the repetition of which creating faith, life, love. And as Cummings ended his poem, dream, joy, truth, and yes, soul. Euphemisms. You're still in the fold, he says, assuring me of my blackness on a corner in Chicago. He points out the beauty of my floral shirt. I thank him, say, unfortunately, Sears has gone out of business. Sears has broken my heart. You must be an artist. You're still in the fold. I don't care what anyone says, you're still in the fold. He adds, clarifies, revises. There are all kinds of brothers. He looks through me before looking away. An artist to him is a euphemism for homosexuality. I pass through anger instantly, reimagine the encounter as an expression of confidence, solidarity, connection, of coming out. Good luck, I say, which is my own euphemism for stay sane in a world in which souls are stolen, stay safe in a world in which we are hunted, stay, in other words, soft. And this last poem is called The Landfill Electric. A geology professor told me about the trash situation. She was from somewhere I don't remember. She said, you Americans, your waste, it's not like this in Europe. She would say things like in Europe, in other places, on the other side of the Atlantic, etc., but never where really. She told me, you Americans, you throw out everything. Everything is in there. There is sofa, hair, table, harmonica, helicopter, celery, button, refrigerator, nails, grass, motorcycle, mayonnaise, drywall, fiddle, syringe, litter, cigarette, diaper, glass pane, stepmother, Sabbath, July, freedom, family, credit, North Korea, etc. She said when these things combine, they mix, they create chemical reactions, toxic radioactive compounds, chemicals emerge, methylene chloride, ammonia, benzene, toluene, naphthalene. So much this liquid, this venomous ejaculate, gallons, millions of gallons, oozing nowhere but down in our soil. So much infiltration and massive seepage through soil, and you just build underground canals, channels, trenches. You just reconfigure, reimagine, reroute the flow of these waxy, fecal, black rivers, these liquid, these smegmate sludge-filled rivers till the trenches are full. Then you bury them and put a golf course on top. What do you think those hills are? Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel Woody. Powerful stuff. Hope is a leap into the abyss. That one really stuck with me. I guess it's also the only choice we have. Despair. That's always there. Thank you for those incredible words. Stay, hang out, have a tea, coffee, whatever you deserved it this morning there in Shanghai. And if you want to find Daniel Woody online, we dropped his Twitter and IG above. I recommend doing so. Next up is writer, artist, scholar, teacher, Caroline Coolidge McCraw. Caroline's disclaimer is that she is not a dancer, nor a drummer, nor even a poet, really, but she made this with love for all of you. Caroline Coolidge McCraw studies, her work has appeared, and she is from. And this is Experiment in Digital Intimacy, Part 8. Thank you, Caroline. And once again, that is Caroline Coolidge McCraw, doing her own dancing, her own stunts. If I tried anything close to that, it'd just be a comedy of a man flailing with a stool in a kitchen. But the one that stuck with me, that sweetness is meant to disappear, right there. Thank you. We dropped Caroline's social media in the chat, so feel free to check her out. She's doing a lot of very interesting stuff, incredibly talented. Now we have winner of the Brunel International African Poetry Prize 2020, Egyptian poet Rabha Ashry. Rabha is an Egyptian from Abu Dhabi and based in Chicago. A New York University Abu Dhabi graduate, she has recently completed her MFA in writing at the School of the Art Institute, Chicago. She spends a lot of time scribbling short poems in her notebook on a train. Well, she probably did before the fall, but you know. She writes about exile, the diaspora, and living between languages. She speaks to her roommate's cat in Arabic because she knows they speak in Arabic too. Feel free to follow her on Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter. This is Rabha Ashry.
Thank you, Jim. All right. So before I start reading today, I just wanted to say that a dear friend of mine passed away this week, Faisal Al-Nuwais. He was my mentor and my therapist and my friend and my family. And I wanted to dedicate this reading to him. So when I was putting together the poems to read, I was thinking a lot about home. So I'm going to read a bunch of poems about Abu Dhabi. The first poem is called Home is In. Home is in clean aisles and clothes racks and fast food, central air conditioning and tired salespeople. Floor tiles dusty with used and plastic potted plants tucked between sale signs and red exclamation points. If I close my eyes and listen to the murmur of the clothes being pushed back and forth on the racks, I can pretend that the prices are in dirhams. That just outside the shop lies the mall I grew up in, the dancing fountains and crystal chandeliers, Chanel next to Starbucks, next to Maghrabi, next to Forever 21, next to Gucci, next to Victoria's Secret. I can still tell you how to get to each shop, the white corridors like the lines on my palms. Home is in the front seat of a car, smoking cigarettes out of the window, singing along to our album of the week. It's the adhan 5 times a day, always unexpected and completely necessary, always different, always the same. Home is the signs in Arabic, the familiar metal of the coins, the different colors of the 100, the 50, the 20 dirham bill, the calligraphy of the newspaper names, the airport signs exclaiming welcome in 50 different languages, the shopping carts that creak, the bookstore with the Arabic section, the reliable hypermarkets with their buzzing fluorescent lights, looking for products, like reading recipes, like finding ingredients, like casting spells. The second poem is called The Kia Karens. We argue about the black car absorbing heat. We let it stall on the corners of highways, hovering over the gray leather seats, thighs sticky, head pounding, back aching. Har! The radio kills the battery, so we give up the music, whistle to each other instead. 4 girls in a broken car, we're danger wrapped in metal. Hamout! We roll down the windows, paint the heat waves, chart its consequences. The trunk a costume closet, we undress. Mish ma'ula. The pavement burns like a fever. We say this car is a betrayal, a home, a coffin. We ignore the PSAs about deadly heat strokes. Parched like it's Ramadan, no one wants the sun-boiled water, the day-old Mountain Dew. إمتى هنوصل? We're all thinking about cold showers, daydreaming about blue pools, plunging underwater, ready to rinse off the city, angry and persistent in the summer. Yalla bina. We drive to the mall, bury ourselves in its air-conditioned belly, past the hot breath of bloated parking lots. خلاص كفاية. This poem is called 6,123 miles, which is the distance between here and Abu Dhabi, where I grew up. Spores grow on my face, line the shorelines of my lips. A word I dreamt but can't sleep, a quick taste of my sandy home. On the plane, the seatbelt sign blinks a lullaby, yawns an afternoon bedtime. I dream of coffins in the air, chasing the sun for 6,123 miles. Illiterate with loss, I study oxygen masks in the outline of my face on dark screens. I'm a foreigner in every place I call home. And this last poem is called Ars Poetica. Mama says that Allah will banish me from her side, her hellbound daughter. I tie my hair like a noose around my neck, my serpentine curls in defiance of all the ways my name has been mishandled. I paint my nails a dark red-brown like a bloodstain. I don't scrub the ink off the Jupiter carpet. I leave all my verses resting on my diaphragm, my esophagus a strangled beast. And I take inspiration in late-night texts about my place in hell and my sister's new puppy. I tarnish the duality of everything that I was and everything that I now am. Unmoored, my fallow mouth, empty still, hesitant now, sometimes as a Zora, sometimes enjambment. I tear the cotton white gauze holding my tongue in place. I grind my teeth down. I abandon heaven and hell, place a water bowl on the ground, trim my dead ends, set my hair on fire, unquenchable and ravenous. I study the architecture of my throat, leave my blood-red lipstick stains on every collar and every sleeve. I write poems like a mouth gaping, like an eye opening against the morning sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabha. Incredibly powerful stuff. And once again, we're sorry for your loss. I think a lot of us have been thinking about the idea of home, especially since we've all spent so much time with them this year. But the line that home could be the front seat of a car smoking cigarettes, that rang really true. This next segment is a little change of pace for our show in that we have a conversation with visual artist Vashon Jordan Jr., whose work we've been seeing throughout tonight's program at the very top, and you'll see some more at the end. I came across his work this summer, like many others, doom scrolling Twitter and tracking protests online. And then when I'd hit the streets myself, I'd see him at protests. He's fairly easy to spot. Big cameras hanging around his neck, and also he's a quite large gentleman. While many local news outlets only covered protests after the fact, or not at all, or only if there was violence, Jordan was in the streets putting his ass on the line at numerous events. We should all know by now that police don't give a damn about brutalizing someone just because they have a camera. This summer, he took over 17,000 pictures, which he boiled down to over 100 for more than 35 demonstrations, community events, and moments that shaped the summer. His book right here, and we'll post a link on how you can get your hands on this. His book, Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution, is here to provide a tangible, authentic visual record. Despite being spurred by violence, Jordan believes the revolution was built on peace, love, and joy. Born and raised in Chicago, he uses photography and videography to showcase authentic stories and moments that reflect the people of this city. He received his associate in art from Kennedy King College and is currently a senior studying at Columbia College, Chicago, working towards his BA. Only 21. I really didn't have any of my shit together at 21. But talking to this young gentleman, he's really got his stuff. It's tight. We will drop all of his links here, his Twitter, his Insta, his Facebook, his Venmo, his Cash App, because he is doing this work in the streets independently. It's on his own dime. So you could feel free to give him money, get in the book, or you could go to Venmo and Cash App, or you could do both. I'm sure Vashon will not hold it against you. We've dropped the link to buy his debut book once again. And this is a clip from a longer conversation, which we'll be posting to our YouTube channel right after the show. This is visual artist, journalist, college senior, Vashon Jordan Jr. in conversation with Exhibit B's very own co-curator and National Book Critics Circle board member, J. Howard Rozier.
I was curious as to how you got into photography, number one, and then number two, like how you got into photojournalism specifically.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this exhibit and to be here today just to talk about the book and all things photography. Media and photography has been something that's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I started off with Kodak disposable cameras. And one thing that you know about disposable cameras is you have a certain number of shots, around 30 or so, and you also don't get to see that photo right away. You have to, take it to Walgreens, get it developed. So you're waiting a few days to see what you shot. And I've always been someone who wanted to document the moment, capture what I see, what's going on, and just get that moment in time in history. So I started out learning the value of a photograph, because nowadays, I have a digital camera. I can shoot 1,000 photos and pick the best one. I can take a photo, look at it, oh, I don't like it, take it again, I don't like it, take it again. But my base of photography was finding that moment, not wasting that shot. When I go to these protests, there's a mission and there's a goal. How can I most accurately capture what they have? So there's one of the protests in the book from the Break the Piggy Bank protest, where the entire idea of it was a symbolic moment of breaking this piñata that was shaped out to be like a police officer, and that represented the police department's budget. They broke it open and like objects fell onto other pieces that replicated and resembled what that money could have went towards. So I knew there was a rally at the beginning, there was a march, that moment happened, they marched back, they circled up. 5 moments, if I only had one, it had to be the physical breaking of the piggy bank, because that is what they wanted to show. And on top of that, the other thing was what best describes this energy here. So all of the decisions for this book were made myself. I didn't have an editor. There was no team. All of that was me. So I know how it felt to be there. I know what moments really captured it all. Look at the Logan Square lockdown. That was one of the biggest moments of the summer. And the protest itself was not meant to be what it became. They had a rally at the Logan Square Monument. They marched as close to the mayor's home as they can get. But then after we got the news that the mayor planned on removing the Columbus statues, it turned into a celebration. So that entire purpose shifted. And I knew that the energy that day was happy, fun, dancing, and capturing that. And then when you have protests, there's a lot of speeches, there's a lot of talking. So I'm trying to figure out what makes this one different, right? Yeah. I could have did all of these demonstrations, just showed you some shots of someone speaking. That doesn't really capture it that much. So I'm also looking at that. I'm looking at what news coverage and what people have not seen yet to just give you that additional part of completing the story. So there are 2 Chicagos, right? The Chicago that you see in this book is different from the Chicago that you see in leadership. There was this overall theme that I saw with a lot of the protests that were led by Black organizers of this idea that we keep us safe. So at all of the protests, they were very, 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 very planned out. So you had people whose job was to keep everybody fed. As you go along the march route, there are people giving you water, giving you snacks, giving you food. There were bike marshals. So there were people that came out, typically white folks, that were allies, and they would bring their bikes and be in between the police officers and the demonstrators to keep that line of protection. The same thing in the neighborhood. There's this idea of, you don't need the police. You can handle conflicts yourself. Out of all the demonstrations that I've been to, there was never one moment where there was a fight between demonstrators. If there was any type of flare-ups, there were anyone coming in who was an agitator, the demonstrators themselves took care of that. The organizers took care of that. back to local square lockdown, there's a point, this is actually in my Twitter thread, where a guy who was anti what the demonstration was about got right in front of it, got right in the middle of it. And actually there's another moment of this towards the back of the book that I really made sure I wanted to highlight this fact. They had a protest. This is one of the cops out CPS protests in front of the CPS board headquarters. So you have, one person here on the mic, and then you have a Blue Lives Matter supporter that just completely crashed the entire circle with this sign, recording everybody. You come right in the middle, and where's the police at? Right, where is the police to diffuse that? You have the people themselves having to take care of this, having to remove that person, having to talk that person down. So you see right there that the community is able to take care of themselves. The other thing about it is, if you look at the entire summer and you look at conflict, 10 times out of 10, it was police versus civilians.
Right.
There was never a moment where the civilians were fighting themselves. The cover of the book, all of these people are here. There were no police officers because the police officers left after they were trying to lock folks up for being in the street. So every single time, and that's why this police argument comes about, the only time there's been conflict is police officers. You mentioned the Freedom Square rally at the Holman Square Black site. I was really, really, really annoyed with the police department because there were hundreds of people taking up that space, having that event, 100% peaceful. And then across the street, the police officers lined the entire block with shields in their riot gear. And it's like, why are you here to basically provoke them because people felt unsafe with their presence and you felt the energy change? And one of my questions for like the police department is like, who are you here to protect? Because you guys are here with your riot gear. These demonstrators are not going to fight anyone but you. So if you all are not here, there is no one to have conflict with. So a lot of it was just taking on those laymen, not even just like the history of police and just this overall aspect, but just very simple. They don't like you. You're here. This causes conflict. If you leave, there is no conflict. So that was one of the things that I saw a lot when it comes to just that dynamic between police officers and civilians.
I just wonder, from your perspective, someone, who is being reached out from or to by the media for like both profiles, and also I would imagine like people might want to buy photos from you, right? And so like, what is your responsibility with regards to, both as someone who people look to for the truth, and also in regards of what you choose to, share or sell with people, like if you choose to?
It's very important to get the truth out. Very important to know the entire story. One of the skills you have to have as a journalist is being able to harness your emotions in a way that you're not immediately reacting off of what you are just feeling in that moment, but you make sure the facts are right. I remember I was at a protest and we all got pepper spray. Now at that time, I made a tweet immediately and I said tear gas. Tear gas and pepper spray are two different things. So like kind of going off that emotion, it's like, oh my God, we were just tear gas. It was like, wait, let me fact check that it was actually pepper spray. And so you referred to with Latrell Allen, the rumor got out that he was—
Latrell Allen, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's in the book. I was at the crime scene. I was there. And one of the moments that became notable was I interviewed Joseph Williams. On Twitter, I gave him the max length video time of 2 minutes and 20 seconds to talk about what he wanted to say. And that video went viral. News outlets were doing interviews on him and referencing the fact that his video going viral is what brought them there. All of the news stations in Chicago were there. None of them were on the block to interview him. All of them were blocks away waiting for the police department to do a press conference, while I was on the actual block of the scene talking to community residents and people in that community who are there and who know what's going on. So there's that disconnect that's happening that we're trying to bridge with my work as well.
It just presents such a strong like counter narrative, because you named the subtitle is joy, and like one of the things I wish we would have talked about this earlier, but like how like you just documented like, you know, the swag surfing and like the footwork and the juking. It was just so much, you know, that, you know, a lot of people don't know that about Chicago, that dance culture is such a huge part of what, you know, we do here, particularly on like the South and West side. And so I was really struck too by how, you know, how much dance culture in Chicago intersected with protest culture in Chicago.
You know, we're a city with very strong roots, and those are the things that you see come through. Like there was that at the same Freedom Square rally, there was footwork in there, right? Which originated here in Chicago. So it's like these protests are so Chicago, and that's what makes them something that people all across the country are looking for, because we have pieces of that are so unique, even with the chants, even with the signs and some of the slogans and sayings. It's like all of these just represent Chicago, but we're all coming together and we're all sharing that culture and sharing that values. And that's one of the beautiful parts about this summer. Like we had people from University of Chicago, Bangor coming out, and they taught their dance routine to everyone at the demonstration. And then they all performed it together. So sharing that culture, sharing those values, breaking bread is one of the biggest things about this summer that we saw.
Vashon Jordan Jr. The book is called Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution.
And that was Vashon Jordan Jr. in conversation with J. Howard Rozier. And the book, like they showed the book, we're showing the book, Chicago Protests, A Joyful Revolution. Vashon is incredibly professional and keeps things straight down the middle as a journalist. I don't have to. I'm not. Black Lives Matter on this show, and fuck the police. Like I said, the book, or you can just give him money. That's fine, or both. We support his work. It's incredibly important. And the key point they made is that Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 2, they weren't around much this summer. And they probably won't be this next summer coming up. I want to admit that we will run a little over 8 o'clock. So it's just a heads up, probably 5 minutes or so. But this is our final performer. The Guild Complex presents Exhibit B, co-founder, show director, who's currently making sure that the right people are on the screen at the right time and that they have sound. And he's helped me set up this wonderful shot I have here in my home. We did the lighting and everything, so I'm just looking as good as I can be right now. He is going to come in front of the camera for the first time on the show with a series of visual poems from his unpublished manuscript, Feralizing. Alex Wells Shapiro is a poet, an artist from the Hudson Valley living in Chicago. He reads submissions for Another Chicago Magazine and Frontier Poetry. His work is recently published or forthcoming in Street Cake, Boudin, Shark Pack Annual, the Indianapolis Review, and the Under Review. You can follow him on www.alexwellshapiro.com. Without further ado, Alex Wells Shapiro.
Wrist itch drink plop attuned me to the ladybug swarm strewn among mold and uneven paint streaks. Dots dim pupils, shells grayed, browned, greened irises wandering in spurts punctuated by contemplative hesitation. My pinch engulfs one body, easing pressure, wincing at a soft exoskeletal crunch like a fucked cicada under a shoe, warning those writhing legs can't endure further. Flick and a flourish of wing descending out of sight, the need to reach my head into AC drip, my heart mimicking a graceful red insect, suspended I pluck more, releasing them increasingly tender and squeamish, foreseeing many soft exoskeletal crunches building to my window, spilling hourglass gradual back over my cell. A dial tone rumbling off a yellow ranch with a white porch, an ultra-modern black glass Bonneville condo, and a withering blue colonial with the attic puked across the lawn, interspersed among nondescript brick buildings, sandy browns, heavy reds, rosier reds, and cinder block grays, connected by wood arteries jutting out their backs. 2 delivery people approach the first, each wearing dark-colored jumpsuits, bandanas, and gloves at the buzzer of a disfigured gate adorned with thin, spiring barbs, securing a svelte courtyard hemmed by unkempt hedges, leading to dozens of little boxes, stacked like an industrial mega-block wall. No one's come in or out for 10 minutes. They test their assignments, pinching and poking 2 hollow, lightly taped cardboard boxes and an envelope laced with a pressed sheet of bubble wrap. The last to arrive has the most to gain. Loading the box onto a hip with a step back like a kamehameha, and heaving with palms, wrists trailing after with a mass-captured On the rise, the weight of its insides catches a panel and the box flies into a stretch of grass snaked through the walkway's center. The corner thud, flop to flat, and the worker returns to their route. Deafened and frustrated in the face of the droning buzzer, the earliest goes next. Knees stooped, box resting in finger-linked cups, hands dangling underhanded like a Rick Barry free throw. Stabilizing pendulum sways growing and growing until releasing with tender touch on the upswing. The rise and fall are parallel, and the box clips the point of a bar, flipping down the other side and clanking into a lane between overgrowth and the fence. The worker returns to their route. The lone deliverer remaining compares envelopes and boxes in their head. Grasping the contents and coiling an arm around a waist, then opening up like a novice discus thrower, the envelope straight-armed back and overhead, and oscillating in search of a groove. Repetition buoying confidence, accelerating to flicking fingertips, and release leading into a return to their route, smooth in step like a left-handed swing. The envelope frisbees axled by its contents like a copter seat flat arcing at the door. The crack of its impact is censored by the still blaring, broken buzzer. The moral is, onomatopoeia leaking into the unmonitored lobby is reported to the landlord portal by some occupants, thought to be indifferent noise. The deliveries are retrieved when a push notification rustles the occupants' pockets. Habitually eating the surrounding sand into a moat defined by embankments, disintegrating under the weight of consumer builders' displacement, and heaving coarse chunks back up, wadded just as they drop down, but glossier, and it'll never feel like every grain is flushed from stomach lining. Habitually lightning bug intoxicated, chasing wrists first like Frankenstein, palms flashing up, reaching, finally capturing a glimmer into squish in an exuberant fist. Habitually picking gunk, irritating the periphery of eyes, flickering free of rest, balling it between thumbs, then palms, then rolling it like a snowman base to sculpt at proximity. Habitually running flattened grass blades through thumb index pressing after a summer under plastic furniture strapped down and spiked to the roots. And the time one stands tall again, the rest are rising back up, seeming to follow. Habitually stridulating tongues dissolving walls onto the apartment floor and bathing us in white slime so thick and viscous, it's cloaking the neighbor like a ghost costume with uncut eye holes. Neon vest glowing like the sun it's siphoning heat from, flowing atop a sweat-dampened maroon and white poppy-patterned cotton blouse sticking on her teary pores. Taillights, tall and wide like mural eyes, flash her face, white flowers, chipped crosswalk lines boxing her into the intersection red with each cautious brake pump, a rhythmic against the bus's warning beeps. The driver is unable to ease their foot off the pedal without shouted, sharp affirmation from two of these empty bus lengths down the block. Above the warnings, the L train, additional beeping, kids at the park, dogs, and a flute, neatly slipping up and down scales, that Wendy is still holding the intersection open, spread arms halting bikers and cars, and sculpting into gesturing detour directions. The moral is, a three-point turn into tedious maneuvering, broad wheel nipping the driver's knees, side mirrors nipping side mirrors, dipping branches brushing the roof, route held up by speed bumps and Parker's departures into AM gridlock. Long and boxy, a Crown Victoria bumper with a t-shirt crisp white paint job tediously maneuvers against traffic on a gridlocked residential one-way, smearing its face in scratches and shreds of sticky ripped decal from red hatchbacks, metallic sedans, black and blue minivans, tire-stilted trucks and SUVs, taxis, and a bus, all rerouted. The CTA is the cop's most imposing obstacle. Cyclists dismount, lift their vehicles atop their helmets, and step between the teeth of parking to the curb, through two ankle-high tree gates, jerking their bikes higher to evade rubberneckers' heads before walking it down the road unencumbered. The moral is, at the intersection, police feed congestion with finger points, directing stagnant drivers, honking irate or in alliance, phones recording or distracting, shouting obscenities or in rhythm, together forced to let the demonstration, a parade of banners dancing in song, 3 people for each vehicle, unified in response to state violence, wash over them. The unlabeled fat ends of aluminum bats disorderly clanking, holstered sways guided by each individual gate, filling and rattling a CTA bus as they unload single file into an intersection, boot clomp accompanying the final step to ground level, opposite community on our knees, amplifying the member whose turn it is for attention. It resounds into a booming rhythm, bottled between a school turned into condos, a Target papered over in plywood, a scaffold-littered L station, a bustling, locked barbershop, a stale bodega exhaling smoke and video poker bloops, and a block of distressed brick apartments roosting atop vacant, gated storefronts, our lips and bodies uniform as the impending officer's arms. The moral is, the community must assemble for rest into pedestrians. Our apartment must hold enough people to work off the cost of living. We lower our shoulders to a brick each, backs huddled like linemen, anchor our hips, push and repeat. Our thrusts incremental and abrasing against the coarse exposure, our outward scrum aiming at studs shelled by sparse decor. After our exhaust, husks folding and crumbling, a new roommate wedges in to work toward further expansion of our space. The neighbors geyser through the walls, piling and mingling in a passive mosh pit, and everyone fits. Two trash bags swelling out of our alleys, overwhelming each other to an impasse, to a chorus of "get the fuck out of the road," to nuzzle for leverage, for to accumulating relentlessly, and the hot rubbing and bumpers ripping between us burst us open, our plastic casing conceding to the chaos composure suppresses, spraying wee remains onto streets already reeking of and glossed in, rotting apple cores and an iPhone 5 and torn jeans and tissue and meats too untrustworthy to reheat. We have family on these streets. We are rain, falling with the faith our gravity will eventually lead us to unity, cluttering, fluttering bodies to be squeegeed between.
And that was our last performance. And I know I'm partial being a co-curator and host of this show, but goddamn, that was a good show. And it's all thanks to our wonderful artists, Caroline Coolidge McCraw, Daniel Woody, Rabha Ashry, Alex Wells Shapiro, and Vashon Jordan Jr. that really made that happen. We'd also like to thank the Guild Literary Complex for their continued support. Once again, we're dropping those links. It's hard times out there. Help them with some money for the arts if you can. And I'd also like to invite you to our next show on January 28th. Next year in 2021, we'll be doing this every other month on the last Thursday of that month. So we're here, we're reliable. We got 6 shows for you coming in the new year. Until then, stay safe, take care of each other, because we're all we got.